I've managed the Thalia Theater since I inherited it from my mother, who in turn inherited it from her mother. As far as we can tell, ownership of the Thalia Theater has been in our family since at least 2648 AUC. Rumor is some of the first films ever made were also shown in the Thalia Theater. Other rumors say that we were a shadow puppet theater before we were a movie theater. While I cannot prove that for sure, I have seen a copy of Horse in Motion made around the right time, and I have seen The Puppet Room, and more than one historian and anthropologist have asked to see our old film archives to make or even preserve a copy. Of course, they're welcome to the history of the Thalia Theater. All are welcome to the history of the theater, but one of the hardest parts of history is making sure that the Thalia Theater doesn't get lost in its own history and nostalgia. And as much as I love the theater, I also worry that it may collapse under its own weight with all of the old traditions that are kept from the old days. I start my day in the apartment on the fourth floor of the theater. I call it an apartment, but it has over a dozen bedrooms, and I don't even know how many kitchens and bathrooms. My entire family lives here, even as far back as my great grandmother, who still technically works at the theater, at least on paper, though her work is mostly sharing stories when asked and listening to other stories when shared. When I am dressed and ready, I head downstairs to prep the theater for our matinee shows. Some of my cousins and sisters all work here as well, but I have to be the first one down. The tradition is that the manager is always the first one working in the theater. I turn on the lights, computers, popcorn makers, and soda machines, and when the last light is on, then the other workers arrive. A lot of the workers have been with the Thalia Theater for a long time. Full-timers wear black, having worked at the Thalia Theater for at least 20 years. They know their roles in the theater, and they don't need a reminder of the traditions and rules. The newcomers, or part-timers, dressed in red, however, by 9 a.m. I'm helping Dejeuner, a college student doing this part-time, cook the popcorn. A drop of oil, a small scoop of seeds, and the light is on. We watch as the seeds pop and slide out over the metal bucket into the glass box below. When we have enough to fill a bag of popcorn, I do so, and I remind Dejeuner, the first doesn't go to us. It doesn't go to the guests either. I tell her as I take the popcorn in a metal door with a tray slot, big enough for a tray and the food on it, but not much else. The first popcorn of the day goes on the tray, along with the first soda, the first pizza baked, and anything else that is made or mixed on site. Candy bars, the ice cream, and most of the alcohol are not requested by the Thalia. I can offer it to her, but it won't satisfy the tradition. When the tray is full, the slot opens, and inside there is a warm, cozy looking room, stacked floor to ceiling with books on shelves, an overstuffed leather chair, and a candle next to the chair, keeping the entire room in soft light. But there is no one inside of the room, or at least no one that can be seen. And when the slot opens, I slide this tray inside, and the slot closes. I move on with my day, and the tray returns to its place by closing. No one has seen anything. The tradition is one that goes back to at least my great-grandmother's day, or even further, if you believe her stories. Back then, everything had to be made by hand or made at the stands. The door just appeared one day, and the directions that any food made in the theater had to be served to the being behind the door came to my great-grandmother in a dream. Whenever we decide not to feed what is behind the door, then the food we serve that day turns rotten or bad in some way. Just the food we didn't serve the door. So if we forgot the popcorn, but we remember the soda, then the soda will be fine, but the popcorn will taste like stale cardboard. In the days when we served moonshine, if we didn't give the first glass to the door, the moonshine would be poisonous to the guests, at least until the being behind the door was fed. Although my great-grandmother said before the door, her parents would have to burn the food and drink in a big burn barrel in front of the theater, one used as a gathering place for those visiting the theater or for those who just had a rough night. One day, however, when the barrel was outlawed as a fire hazard, the door appeared the next day, along with my great-grandmother's dream. The only reason I doubt her is I've seen old pictures of the Thalia, and there was no old burn barrel in front of the Thalia in any of the pictures. This tradition is one I don't mind too much, and honestly, it isn't hard to explain to the employees. Even the most skeptical employee can usually understand the concept of throwaway when you first make food, or the idea of a taste test. But for those whose horizons aren't behind their eyes, they usually have heard stories about how you leave food as tribute for the gods, tributes for the ancestral spirits in your home, tithes for the fair folk, gifts for invisible guests, or something else similar. Whatever the being behind the door is, fae, spirit, ancestral ghost, troll, muse, godling, house god, or even full-on Olympic god, I don't know. I've only seen it a few times, and every time I see it, I am reminded why it hides when collecting its food. There are 13 screens in the Thalia Theater, 6 on the ground floor, 6 on the second floor, and 1 in the basement. The 12 screens above the basement are modern projectors, usually showing the newest cinema releases, action movies, cartoons, musicals, dramas, gothic romances, or Gaelic tragedy. This is why most people go to the theater. The experience of watching it on a big screen with popcorn, soda, and other snacks among other people. And that is the angle the Thalia Theater is aiming for. The experience of going to the theater. You get snacks, you get drinks, you get the big screen, you get the reclining heated seats. You can even have snacks delivered to your seats. The experience. Still, though, just like how the first food made in the theater has to be given to the being behind the doors, our first showings of the movies aren't for the guests. They're for something else. When we get our film to show the movie, our first showing isn't to a full house. Our first showing isn't to the premiere either. It isn't even the sneak preview for VIPs or for people who think that money is the same thing as VIP. The first time we run the movie on the projector is done during a test run that my great-grandmother calls the ghost show. The night we get the film, whether it's the physical film, a digital file, a disc, tape, or something else entirely, we find an auditorium that isn't showing a movie at midnight, and we play the movie at precisely midnight. No commercials, no teasers, no advisory warnings, no words from the government. Just the cold open of the movie, and we let it play through. We make sure that there are no guests nor employees allowed into the auditorium, although we can watch it safely from the projector booth. From inside of the booth, though, you can see, even though no one was let into the auditorium, that every single seat of the auditorium has been filled. Every guest transfixed by the screen, transfixed by the movie like it is something that they've never seen before. And, for all I know, They never have even seen a movie before. Still, though, the ghost show isn't for guests. It isn't for employees. It isn't even for the living. Whoever sits in those seats, I know they aren't the same as the being behind the door. For one thing, I can see them. For another, if we forget the ghost show, these shades don't keep us from showing the movie. Instead, they watch the movie alongside the living. Most of the living don't notice shades at all. Some will notice the shades from the corner of their eyes, but assume it isn't something that is actually there. But the few guests who can see them get very uncomfortable with the idea of shades sitting on them. The other reason we have the ghost show is when the ghost show ends, in every seat is a golden aura, worth 200 times the cost of a single ticket and over 100 times the profit of what we usually make off our living guests. And that is the secret of our true profits. A single ghost show is worth selling out the theater 100 times to the living. It is part of why the theater always seeks out the newest films to show. An artistic movie about a homeless veteran who fights the legal system to marry his teddy bear? Sure, we will run it. A single ghost show and a few matinee shows, so a few people can say they've seen Barely Legal Veteran. We send a portion of the ticket costs, including the ghost show fee, to the production company, and we consider ourselves as a theater that has a wide range of shows. 5 million centii ghost show pretty much guarantees a profit on every single movie shown in Thalia Theater. If anything, there's more value to showing numerous independent movies than to show one or two popular Hollyland movies, just because there are more ghost shows. As profitable as the ghost shows are, I cannot keep the money for myself. There is an important lesson from my great-grandmother that we have carried forward. Don't get greedy. Thalia Theater has a way of teaching lessons to the greedy. My grandmother, for example, once tried to refuse her employees' wage raises, citing a drop in guest numbers as a reason to avoid paying the raises one year. Not long afterwards, my grandmother was found dead at the snack bar, having choked to death on a candy bar, which isn't normally that strange, but it was strange that the chocolate bar was still solid, even hours after her death. My mother was only 4 at the time, but now management responsibilities passed on to my great-grandmother again, and it became an important lesson to share in the family. Don't stiff your employees. Thankfully, not all lessons about fairness were nearly that harsh, but it can still be very clear when we transgress. Back in 2756, when my mother ran the theater, there was a tradition carried forward from the days of the Depression. Centii Tuesdays, a day where the guests could pay a single centii to get unlimited popcorn, pop, and movies. Back in the old days, this was created to give people a source of cheap entertainment when they needed something to believe in, something to escape to, and something to look forward to. As the economy recovered, the Centii Tuesdays were kept, either as a sense of tradition or maybe out of a feeling of giving to the community. Well, my mother decided there was too many people taking advantage of the generosity of the Thalia Theater, that they could make a lot more money if it was simply removed. So the first time Centii Tuesday was declared a thing of the past, the theater was practically empty. A few stragglers who came in to ask if Centii Tuesday was still done, when they heard it was no longer a thing, they simply left. And it wasn't just the living guests who left either. The being behind the door didn't open the slot to accept food, and the food made in the theater all tasted rotten and foul. And the next time my mother tried to show a ghost show, none of the shades appeared, no golden auras were left in the seats. The greatest source of income in the theater, just gone. All because she wanted to try and make more money by removing a single day of generosity. She quickly learned her lesson, and she reinstated Centii Tuesday next week. And when it came back, the being behind the door started accepting food again, and our food was safe to eat. The ghost shows made money again, and we brought our audience back. While there are a few theories on why this was, some say there was a wizard who loves Centii Tuesdays, and he blesses the theater each week he comes in. Others say it was the nature of the universe. We give good out, we get good back. And me? I agree with my great-grandmother. It had to do with the nature of hosts and guests. Hosts are expected to show some generosity to their guests, and guests are supposed to show appreciation to their hosts. When my mother stopped showing generosity with Centii Tuesdays, with nothing left to take its place, then our guests stopped showing their appreciation. We got lucky, though. If the shades or the being behind the door just moved on, then the theater wouldn't have recovered. Even with all of the living guests, and that brings us to another dark realization of the Thalia Theater. We simply aren't making enough money from the tickets and concessions. Not for the wages we're paying everyone. We do make money, sure, and more than a few of our guests are those who come every week or even every day. But a lot of the guests come to the theater only once every few months or so. We are competing against online streaming and even piracy, so we simply cannot beat them by price or quantity. So we focus on experiences, which helps, but ultimately the money that is keeping us solvent is those from the ghost shows. We are dependent on the appreciation of the shades and from the being behind the door to stay in business. As helpful as they have been, and the fact that they have been reliable for over a century, is nice. But I also know very little about the shades and the being. For all I know, if I install an air conditioner, I might upset them for unknown reasons. Or I might have an exorcist or a sin eater visit the theater and clear them out. And that brings me to the final inexplicable part of the Thalia Theater. Maybe the only thing that can give me any answers. Auditorium 13. The screen kept in the basement. It is our largest auditorium, capable of seating about 1,000 people. And the projectors down there go back literal centuries. Projectors that still run on oil and still used for shadow puppetry, back when the Empire had 6 cities. Projectors that could project films so old, it was practically a museum piece. Films that had musical sheets used for the orchestras that used to play along with the movie. Even films that were considered lost could be found in the projection booth of Auditorium 13. Auditorium 13 has a copy of every single movie that has been shown by the Thalia Theater. And by every single movie, I mean every single movie. From the first film telling of Alice in Wonderland put onto film, to films so racist and sexist, even reading the titles makes me uncomfortable, to films that no one remembered anymore. Even the digitally made movies that stopped showing in theaters are down here. No longer in a digital format, now on film at one of the projectors down here can play. Sometimes it means something like a slasher from the 2760s is now an 8mm film, and sometimes that means something from the 2750s can now only be played on a silent film. It is in Theater 13 that we play the old movies for the guests who request it. We don't post the time online. We don't even know what movie we will show when. We do know, however, sometimes a guest walks in from outside and they place down a single silver denarii and they ask for a ticket to Auditorium 13. The guest can be anyone. Sometimes they are a child with golden eyes who have seen far too much. Sometimes they can be a very old man with a very kind smile, with an unlit cigar in his mouth and skeletal paint on his dark face. And sometimes the guests will be people that, no matter how hard you try to recall who they are, you just know that they asked to go to Auditorium 13. And that leads to one of the easiest jobs in the entire theater, working in the projector booth of Auditorium 13. Projectionist will arrive in the booth, and on the wall will be a clipboard with a schedule of what movies need to be played, when that day. Most days, there is no schedule at all, and the projectionist can watch whatever movie they want. They'll even text their friends or family to invite them down to Auditorium 13. When they arrive, the fact they don't pay with denarii is enough to tip off the docent that they aren't an inexplicable guest. Sometimes we even pivot Auditorium 13 into being a special late-night showing of an old movie. Not as a way to make money, but just a way to show old movies that normally wouldn't get shown. Plus, it doesn't feel right to me to leave that part of the theater to just molder, waiting for inexplicable guests to arrive. Still, though, there has been some weirdness in Auditorium 13. Back when I was starting out and I was asked to work that projection booth, I paid attention to the movies made for the inexplicable guests, even though I was told not to watch it. I wish I listened. And I also wish that I watched those movies earlier. They weren't normal movies. They weren't even the movies listed. I have seen a lot of movies. I have seen genres that most people don't even know exist. I have seen lost films. I have seen edited films. I've seen documentaries of state-run executions and collected serial killer tapes. The theater has them all. These films aren't horrifying in the way you think of horror films. They aren't bloodier than horror movies. They aren't gory. The patterns beneath the film, the sounds beneath the sound, the symbols beneath the screen. It reveals things that you probably wish stayed veiled. One time I saw the Alice in Wonderland cartoon, and I saw entire cities beneath the roots of the flowers. One time I saw the Alice in Wonderland cartoon, and I saw entire cities beneath the roots of the flowers. Cities crushed and rebuilt every time the flowers sang. I saw the white rabbit turn to face me, and I heard my grandmother's voice when he said, "I am late. I am very, very late for an important date." I saw two-dimensional shapes turn three-dimension, and then unfold into something I think was meant to be four-dimensional, as it folded through different shapes that didn't exist in a three-dimensional space. I saw shades, both like those in ghost shows, and like those unlike the ghost shows. I saw amorphous beings that were terrified to be viewed, and I saw beings as unchangeable as eternity that were terrifying to observe. And the worst part of that experience, after the movie ended, I saw things I never could see before the movie, things that I wish I couldn't see, and things that I wish I could forget, and things I wish I've seen before, and things I wish I will never forget. I could see doors and walls and buildings all over the city, a lot of them seemingly leading nowhere, but I dared not to touch the door, just in case I was right. I also saw that many places were far more crowded than I thought possible, like it was two different films playing on top of each other. I could see the docent taking money and selling tickets to shades, and when I asked her about the shades, she remarked that she didn't sell any tickets at all. At the museum, I could see a cowboy-looking man playing a guitar in front of the museum I was taking pictures of. It wasn't until I came home that I realized he didn't appear in any of my pictures. I could see the shades of buildings over buildings, shades over shades, almost like I was viewing the past, present, and future all at the same time. The hard part is, it isn't always possible to tell what was what. I have climbed stairs leading up a building and entered through an old door, only to turn around and realize I climbed up a staircase and a door that no longer existed, still getting into the building. I have gone to the park and listened to brand new songs and new bands playing for a cheering crowd. I nodded along and listened to the song, only to realize it was a band that wouldn't be out for years, or even decades, leaving me knowing songs that have yet to be sung. So, as easy as the job is in Auditorium 13, and even though everyone is told not to look at the inexplicable films, everyone in the family breaks a little and sees the films at least a little. For most, they see less than I have, so they will see an occasional shade or get a glimpse of the past, like a snapshot of a random point. Then there are those like me and my great-grandmother. We see a lot and we want to see more, and we know that is a bad idea. I have lost more than a few relatives to asylums, and there is a reason there are no men left in the family. They kept pushing, and what they saw pushed back. My great-grandmother, who has seen far more than I ever will, went blind years ago, and still she can see the shades of past and future. She just can no longer see the present. She hasn't left the theater in nearly 2 decades, and she will not tell any of us why. Just that when she dies, she wants to die in the theater. I think she wants to haunt the theater, along with all my other relatives who have died here. When you die in the theater, you become the phantom of the theater, a shade whispering to the guests to be quiet during the movie, a kind hand pulling up someone who fell down, a whisper reminding the workers of something they forgot, a scream that stops a robbery, a figure in the mirror. That is all of what is left of those who died in the theater. They don't talk to me, except to warn of a task I forgot. Most of the dead are talkative. My family isn't like most dead. Running the Thalia Theater, it helps to be able to see more than the average person. You know that the past of the theater is as much of the part of the theater as the present is. I have helped my employees with their troubles, only to realize later on that those employees had left years ago, or they haven't been hired yet. I wonder if all of the strange events of the theater are truly separate hauntings or phenomena, or if they are all connected to the film shown in Auditorium 13. Are the shades watching the ghost shows truly ghosts, or are they guests from the past or future watching these shows? Is the being behind the door a fae we have to appease, or is it maybe an old owner of the theater who is getting food from the future? Are the stories from my coworkers finding tools, food, or even coin moved by unseen phantoms truly phantoms, or are they echoes of the past and future having an effect on the present? I want to see more of the films in Auditorium 13 to know more, but I also feel like that I know too much as it is. A lot of the unseen have gotten used to being unseen. However, if they realize that they can be seen, sometimes they get fascinated with you. Remember when I said the being behind the door is invisible? That is true for most people. That isn't true for me. Not anymore. After watching one of the strange films in Auditorium 13 around the 12th time or so, I could see something reclining in the chair behind the door. It was more shadow than flesh, with two large wings behind its back, almost like an angel. But I know for certain that the being behind the door is no angel. How? Because I can see its face. I couldn't tell you if the being had 2 arms or 108 arms. I couldn't tell you if it had legs or if it trailed off into smoke. But I could tell you it had a face. I could see its eyes, stunning, poisonous red eyes, like all of the love in the world distilled into those eyes. I could see a strong nose, and beneath its nose, a smiling mouth with perfect teeth, a flattering smile. A smile aimed towards me, and eyes that devoured me like a starving beast. I knew in my heart that the being behind the door would consume me in an instant, and still be ravenous if it could. I also knew in my heart that I wouldn't want to stop him. Not with those eyes. Not with that smile. I didn't try to look it in the eyes, but I think it suspected I knew it was there. When one late night I was working and it opened the door. As it exited the door, I could see it move like death, silently and quickly, following behind me in my shadow, eyes that stared into me and everything I did. A being I had to ignore as it followed me, because it spoke with honeyed words and a silver tongue, and I knew if it knew I could see or hear it, it would take me. I know you can see me. I can see you. Give me your name, give me your heart, and give me your life, and I will be your slave. I have many children. I have had many wives. Don't you wish to be one of them? Your eyes are like jewels. Just whisper the word to me, and I will collect them from you, leaving you in blissful darkness. You don't even need to whisper a word to me. Just meet my eyes, and I will tear out your eyes so quickly that you won't feel a thing. Let me into your bedroom. Let me give you a child. I have given your mother many children. I have given your grandmother many more children. And I have given all of your mother's children. Let me in, and I will make you my wife, just like I have to your mother. All you have to do is let me into your bedroom, or you can just leave the door open, and I will know that you want me, it would whisper, its words echoing in my mind, and even as I knew that accepting its offers would mean a possible end to me. Still, though, something inside of me, I don't know if it was curiosity or something darker, wants to know more, to see if it would truly teach me more. Still, though, now I wonder why my mother and great-grandmother both leave their bedroom doors open, while my sisters and cousins are all told to leave their doors closed at night. Have all of the men in our family truly been killed? I don't have a picture of my father, grandfather, nor great-grandfather. I don't even know their names. I know I was supposedly born with a twin brother, but I don't remember him. We have no records of him, nor do we have a name for him or any other man in our family. If my mother and great-grandmother are keeping secrets from me, maybe the being behind the door can tell me. Is the being honest when he threatens me? Or is that his way trying to get my attention? Or is it invading my mind? Even when I am away from the theater, I feel like he is always watching me, like it is stalking me. Or is there something in me that is pulling me towards him? Where would I even go to find any answers about this being? Maybe all I have to do to know is leave my door open tonight.